When a widowed cowboy placed an ad in the newspaper, all he wanted was someone kind enough to raise his two motherless sons and keep his lonely ranch from falling apart. But when Evelyn Harper stepped off that dusty stagecoach, trembling, alone, and far from everything she knew, she wasn't what the townsfolk expected. Whispers followed her name, hearts began to stir, and somewhere between duty and desire, two broken souls started to heal in ways neither saw coming. Would love be strong enough to silence the gossip and give them both the second chance? If you believe love can bloom even in the hardest places, keep watching.
Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We've got more powerful stories coming every single day, and you don't want to miss them. Now, let's begin.
The lamp flickered on the worn kitchen table, throwing a soft amber light across ink-stained paper. Caleb Morgan sat hunched over the page, his calloused fingers clumsy around the pen. Outside, the wind rolled over the plains, rattling the window panes like an old ghost come calling. The sound didn't scare him anymore, only reminded him how empty the nights had become. Two small snores drifted from the loft above where his son slept, tangled in quilts his late wife had sewn. He looked up, listening to them, and something inside his chest tightened. They were good boys, quiet, strong, but too young to carry the kind of silence that filled this house. He dipped the pen again and began to write. Widowed rancher seeks good Christian woman to help raise two young sons. Must be steady of heart, gentle of manner, and not afraid of hard work. Home and honest living provided. When he finished, he stared at the words until they blurred. The paper trembled slightly between his fingers. What kind of man had he become, asking a stranger to come live his life? Yet what choice did he have? The ranch needed more than his hands. His boys needed more than his quiet love. He folded the letter, sealed it, and laid it by the door for the next morning's post. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry all the years since Martha's passing, Caleb blew out the lamp. The darkness pressed close again, familiar and patient. But tonight, for the first time in a long while, he whispered a small prayer into it. A prayer for someone who might answer. The stagecoach rattled down the dusty main street of Willow Creek, its wheels creaking in protest after the long journey west. When it came to a halt before the general store, a cloud of pale dust rose, veiling the small crowd that had gathered, curious eyes, quiet whispers. Evelyn Harper stepped down carefully, one gloved hand clutching her single valise, the other gripping the railing as if the ground might shift beneath her. She was smaller than anyone expected, a thin woman, with soft brown hair pinned neatly, her traveling dress faded but clean. The driver tipped his hat, muttered a polite farewell, and rode off, leaving her alone in the middle of town. A group of women by the mercantile door watched closely. One leaned to another and murmured, "That must be the one. The widow's cowboy's bride." Evelyn heard it. Her cheeks burned, but she lifted her chin, forcing her trembling hands to still. Then she saw him. Caleb Morgan stood by his wagon at the end of the street, hat in hand, the afternoon sun catching the gold in his hair. He looked solid, steady, and impossibly far from everything she'd ever known. He stepped forward. "Miss Harper?" "Yes," she said softly, her voice barely reaching him. For a moment neither spoke. The wind carried the scent of hay, leather, and something new, possibility. He nodded toward the wagon. "You've had a long ride. Let's get you home." As he lifted her trunk, Evelyn stole one last look at the town, at the faces half curious, half cruel. Would this be where her courage broke, or where her new life truly began? The Morgan Ranch sat low in the valley, its fences stretching toward the setting sun. Evelyn had never seen so much open land. It seemed the sky itself touched the earth here. By the time they reached the house, her hands were stiff from holding her valise, her nerves raw from silence. Caleb helped her down, his touch careful but distant. Inside, the home smelled faintly of wood smoke and horses, but there was also something gentle, a trace of soap, perhaps, or the ghost of another woman's care. On the mantel sat a single photograph, a smiling woman holding two small boys. Evelyn's heart ached. She found her courage and busied herself in the kitchen, setting the table for 4. The boys, Sam and Luke, hovered in the doorway, whispering to each other. She smiled at them, nervous but kind. "Would you fetch me some plates?" They obeyed, though Sam's eyes never left her face. When the stew boiled over, she flinched, spilling gravy down her sleeve. Caleb rose silently, took the towel from her hand, and helped wipe the mess away. Their fingers brushed just a moment, and the air shifted, soft as the light outside. At supper, no one spoke much. The only sounds were the clink of spoons and the ticking of the old clock. Then Luke giggled, out of nowhere, and Sam, trying to hush him, ended up laughing too. The sound was quick, bright, unexpected. Evelyn looked up, surprised, and smiled. Caleb glanced at her then, really looked. And for the first time since Martha's death, warmth flickered through the hollow place inside him. For the first time, the house felt a little less empty. The next morning, Evelyn dressed early, determined to visit the general store. She needed flour, coffee, and perhaps a sense of belonging. The town seems quiet, almost too quiet, as she walked the wooden boardwalk, her boots clicking softly. Inside, the store smelled of sugar and dust. 3 women stood near the counter, whispering behind gloved hands. Evelyn tried not to listen, but their words drifted like thorns through lace. She came by coach alone. A mail-order bride, they say. Poor thing, he just needed help, I suppose. Her fingers tightened around the sack of sugar. The shopkeeper offered her a kind nod, but the eyes of the women burned on her back as she paid. When she stepped outside, she drew a long breath, the cold air stinging her cheeks. A buggy rolled up beside her, Mrs. Foster, the preacher's wife, smiling kindly. "You must be Mrs. Morgan's replacement," she said, her tone soft but genuine. "It's not an easy thing starting over out here. Let me give you a ride home." Grateful, Evelyn climbed aboard. The valley stretched before them, wide and waiting. She clutched her parcel close and whispered a silent promise to herself, to earn her place, no matter how small. Can her quiet courage melt a town's whispers before they harden into judgment? The morning sun stretched gold across the pasture as Caleb worked to mend a broken fence. Evelyn approached quietly, her skirts brushing the tall grass. "May I help?" she asked, voice small but steady. He looked up, surprised. "You ever fixed a fence before?" She shook her head, gripping her gloves tighter. "No, sir, but I can learn." He handed her a hammer, hiding a faint smile. She knelt beside him, awkwardly holding the rail while he nailed it in place. Her hands trembled at first, soft and unsure, but she didn't give up. Dust settled on her hair. Sunlight catching the fine strands until they glowed like honey. After a while, he noticed her trying to straighten the crooked post with all her might. "Careful there," he said gently, steadying it with his hand. Their fingers brushed. Again, that brief spark neither expected. She looked up, startled, then laughed nervously. "You make it look easy," she said. "It ain't," he replied, "but it gets easier with company." They worked in silence after that, the air warm with something unspoken. When the last nail went in, Evelyn leaned against the rail, breathless and smiling. Caleb glanced her way, a soft grin tugging at his mouth. It wasn't much, a fence repaired, a quiet morning shared, but something between them had shifted, as steady and sure as the post in the ground. The ranch was quiet that night, the kind of stillness that makes every sound feel like a secret. The boys had gone to bed, their laughter fading to soft dreams. Evelyn sat by the window with her mending, needle glinting in the lamplight. Then, from the porch, came the low hum of a guitar. She hesitated, listening. Caleb's voice, quiet and rough as gravel, carried through the open door. The tune was tender, old, aching, beautiful. She set her sewing aside and stepped softly to the doorway. He didn't notice her at first. The moonlight silvered his face, his hat resting on his knee, fingers moving with surprising grace over the strings. For a moment, Evelyn forgot to breathe. When he stopped, she spoke gently. "Please, don't stop. It's beautiful." He looked up, startled, the faintest smile curving his lips. "Didn't figure anyone wanted to hear an old song." "I did," she said, her voice trembling. "It sounds like home." Something passed between them then, quiet, heavy, and warm. The kind of silence that hums with everything unsaid. Caleb cleared his throat, set the guitar aside, and nodded toward the door. "Best get some rest, Miss Harper. Early morning comes fast." She smiled faintly, retreating into the house, but her heart beat wildly in her chest. Could a single song in the dark awaken feelings neither dared to name? The morning dawned bright and soft, sunlight spilling across the prairie like honey. Evelyn was in the kitchen, kneading bread, when the screen door creaked open and two small shadows appeared. Sam and Luke stood there, dirt on their boots, grins too big to hide. "We got you something," Luke said, his small hands clutching a bundle behind his back. Sam rolled his eyes, but smiled anyway. Evelyn wiped her flour-dusted hands on her apron and knelt. "Oh? What could it be?" Luke brought it forward, a handful of wildflowers, stems bent, petals trembling. "We picked 'em by the creek. Ma used to put flowers on the table," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The words hit her like a soft blow to the chest. For a moment she couldn't speak. Then she smiled, eyes glistening. "They're beautiful. Thank you." She found a chipped jar and filled it with water, arranging the flowers as though they were the finest roses. The boys watched, shy but proud. Sam glanced toward the door. "Pa said Ma liked daisies best. Guess you do too?" "I do," Evelyn whispered. "Very much." When Caleb came in from the pasture, he paused at the doorway. The sunlight caught the little jar of flowers, glowing bright against the worn table. Evelyn stood beside it, the boys laughing as she dusted flour onto their noses. For the first time, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt lived in, warm, whole. Caleb's throat tightened as he watched them, his sons, their laughter, and the woman who'd brought it back. The town's barn was strung with paper lanterns, and the smell of pie and hay filled the night air. Music drifted through the open doors, fiddles, laughter, the rhythmic thump of boots on wooden floors. Evelyn stood just outside, smoothing the skirt of her only good dress, her heart fluttering like a trapped bird. Caleb joined her, freshly shaven, his best shirt tucked neat. "You don't have to go in if you'd rather not," he said quietly. "I want to," she answered, though her voice quivered. "I just don't know how to dance like these people." He smiled slightly. "Then we'll learn together." Inside, eyes turned their way, curious, measuring. The whispers she'd tried so hard to ignore seemed to hum above the music. But when Caleb offered his hand, steady and sure, she took it. Their first steps were clumsy. She nearly tripped, he chuckled, and she looked up, startled by how freely he laughed. Soon, the rhythm found them. His hand guided her, his warmth steady at her back. Around them, the gossip softened, the room fading into nothing but the sound of their hearts keeping time. When the song ended, they stood breathless, smiling shyly like children caught doing something brave. Outside, the lantern light glowed soft against Evelyn's face as Caleb whispered, "You did fine, Miss Harper. Real fine." Could love truly bloom in the same place where whispers once tried to bury it? The dance had long ended, but the night lingered sweet and still. The wagon creaked gently along the moonlit trail, the boys asleep in the back beneath a quilt. Overhead, the stars stretched endless and bright, scattered like spilled sugar across velvet. Evelyn sat beside Caleb, her hands folded in her lap, heart still fluttering from the music, from his nearness. Neither spoke for a while. The horse's steady rhythm filled the silence between them. Finally, she said softly, "I used to dream of a life like this. Not the hard work or the gossip, but the peace. I thought maybe it didn't exist." Caleb glanced at her, his voice low. "It's real enough, just hard to hold on to." She turned, watching his profile in the pale light, strong, weathered, kind. "You miss her," she whispered. He didn't deny it. "Every day. But it's different now." His eyes met hers, honest and uncertain. "When you came, I thought it'd just be help I was getting. Didn't expect." He stopped, struggling for words. Evelyn's breath caught. "Didn't expect what?" Caleb smiled faintly, eyes soft. "Didn't expect to feel the house come alive again. Didn't expect to feel alive again." The world seemed to still around them. The air hummed with something fragile and true. Evelyn looked down, her fingers trembling. "Then maybe we both found what we didn't expect." The stars burned brighter as the wagon rolled on, two hearts quietly finding their way through the dark. Rain whispered against the windows, a steady rhythm that made the old house feel smaller, cozier. The boys were upstairs playing checkers, their laughter echoing faintly through the beams. Evelyn tidied the parlor, humming softly, when her hand brushed against a small wooden box on the bookshelf. Curiosity tugged at her. She hesitated, then lifted the lid. Inside lay a neat bundle of letters, her letters, tied with twine, edges worn from being opened many times. She blinked, heart stuttering. Caleb had kept them, every word she'd written before she came west, the fears, the prayers, the hope she'd barely dared to admit. She was still holding one when he entered, hat dripping rainwater. His eyes fell to the box, and for a heartbeat, neither spoke. "I shouldn't have," she began, but he shook his head. "It's all right," he said quietly. "Those letters got me through the nights. I read 'em when the house felt too empty. I reckon I already knew you before you ever stepped off that stagecoach." Her breath caught, emotion welling like the rain outside. "And now?" she asked softly. He took a step closer, his voice low, steady. "Now I know what I prayed for wasn't just help. It was you." Evelyn's eyes filled, her trembling hand still clutching the letter. The storm outside grew louder, but inside everything felt still, safe, certain. Can love born from letters truly heal what loss once hollowed? Spring crept gently into the valley, softening the ground and painting the hills in tender green. The ranch buzzed with life, chickens clucking, the boys' laughter ringing across the yard, the scent of fresh bread drifting from the kitchen window. Evelyn moved through the house with ease now. Her apron was dusted with flour, her hair loose, a few wisps curling against her cheeks. Luke sat at the table, tongue between his teeth, as he sounded out the words of a book, while Sam helped her stir the stew, pretending not to enjoy it. Caleb paused in the doorway, watching. Sunlight poured over them like grace, and something inside him eased. For years he'd lived half asleep, the weight of loss dulling everything. But now the rooms echoed with laughter and warmth. The ache was still there, but it had softened into memory. No longer a wound, but a reminder of what he'd survived. Evelyn looked up and caught him staring. She smiled, that soft, knowing smile that seemed to light the whole room. "Dinner's nearly ready," she said. He crossed the floor and kissed her forehead, a simple gesture, but it felt like a promise. The boys looked up, grinning. Luke wrinkled his nose. "Pa! You're not supposed to do that in the kitchen." Caleb chuckled, drawing Evelyn close. "Guess I'll have to do it everywhere else, then." The laughter that followed filled every corner of the home. For the first time in years, it sounded like life, real and full. The day dawned, clear and golden. The sky stretched wide and endless above the Montana hills. Wildflowers swayed in the gentle wind, their colors bright against the green. Evelyn stood beneath a tall cottonwood tree, her dress simple but beautiful. Ivory lace borrowed from the preacher's wife, a ribbon of pale blue tied at her waist. The small gathering of neighbors and friends waited quietly, faces warm, the old gossip long turned to smiles. Sam and Luke stood proudly on either side of their father, their hair neatly combed, their grins wide and unguarded. Caleb's hands trembled slightly as he held his hat against his chest. When Evelyn walked toward him, every sound seemed to fade but the soft rustle of her skirts. The preacher's voice was steady, but Caleb barely heard the words. His eyes were on her, shining. "I never thought I'd find joy twice in one lifetime," he whispered when the moment came to speak his vows. Evelyn's voice trembled, tears bright in her eyes. "You didn't find it twice," she said. "You just kept enough love to share again." The crowd smiled, the boys clapped, and as the wind carried the preacher's blessing across the open field, Caleb kissed his bride beneath the endless sky. The ranch below gleamed in the sunlight, the home they'd built together full of laughter and life. She had come to raise his sons, but instead she'd raised his heart back to life. Years later, the Morgan Ranch still hummed with laughter. Wildflowers grew thick along the fence line, and Evelyn's voice could often be heard calling the boys, now young men, to supper. Caleb would watch her from the porch, guitar resting on his knee, a quiet smile tugging at his lips. The wind moved softly through the valley, carrying their laughter across the fields, the sound of a promise kept, and a love that had truly come home.
Thank you for watching till the end. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. We'll be dropping brand new powerful stories every single day. See you on the next one.